Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Body moving, body moving, body moving. We be body moving, body moving, body moving, body moving. We be body moving, body moving, a body moving, body moving. We be body moving, body moving, a body moving, body moving, body moving, body moving, body moving.
And we're back. The band is back together. No, not the Beastie Boys. It is the Fantasy Greeks NFL Power Hour. I am one of your illustrious hosts, Keith Grieve. And joining me, as always, on Wednesday nights is Jim Zarantias, the Fantasy Greek himself from thefantasygreek.com. Jim, reunited, and it feels so good.
Keith. All right, it was, who the hell sang Reunited? It was Richie, Lionel Richie.
Was it?
And Donna Summers? No.
It might have been. Let me see if I can.
Reunited.
No, you know what? Peaches and Herb.
Oh, Peaches and Herb. I can't even believe I made that mistake. Oh. Well, Keith, it is good to be back. It's good to be back with you, my man.
Whoa, that was not Peaches and Herb. That just got played right there. So, as you can see, folks, it is July. We are in training camp mode, broadcastingly speaking, and we are going to go through the path to the draft. If you caught last week, so July 15th, actually, I think it was, the 87 Sports Fans Live that's still available on latenightsportsradio.com. We covered keepers and dynasty-type questions to get you ready for your fantasy draft. But now we take the next step, and we're going to go down the list according to the Fantasy Greeks' own rankings of quarterbacks. We're going to cover the quarterback position today. We can take your calls at 585-633-7487. That's 585-633-7487. Or tweet your questions with the hashtag AskTFG. If you haven't figured that out, that stands for the Fantasy Greek. And we'll answer your questions on the air. We'll be more than happy to take your calls. That number again, 585-633-7487. So we would be remiss if we tried to start a program, not only about football, but about quarterbacks, if we didn't bring up the elephant in the room as it is, and that's this whole Tom Brady suspension thing. I don't even want to call it Deflategate because we've all heard everybody's arguments about Deflategate. Now the problem is about the handling of this suspension. And Jim, why don't you give your take first, because I've done enough talking already. So, go ahead.
Okay, well, let's just start off with the facts. And the facts are the NFL has affirmed or ratified, or whatever verb you'd like to use, the Tom Brady suspension of 4 games. And then today, and basically what they said was, we sat through 10 hours of testimony, and at the end of the day, nothing changed our opinion. And in fact, Tom Brady destroyed his phone knowingly that we would be looking for it and the information that it's contained. And then Tom Brady responds and says, and they uphold the 4-game suspension. And Tom Brady responds, in essence, if I understand it, that he didn't know that he was supposed to preserve it, and that denying every allegation, any information in what I will say presented evidence in the Wells report, denying that any of that is true. And here we are. They're going to be battling this out in federal court. I think there's a good chance that an injunction is entered enjoining the NFL from enforcing the suspension. So Tom Brady will, in my opinion, likely be playing in week 1 and probably into the season. And at some point in the middle of the season, there'll be a decision as to whether or not the suspension shall be enforced. And based on precedent, I'm also going to opine that it will be overturned. I think that's what will happen. It will have no suspension, but the draft pick and the money will likely still be in place. It seems that the Patriots are more than happy to sort of say, we'll take some punishment, but we just don't want Tom or the organization dragged through the mud. So that gets us to today.
And what
And I don't know that that's the opinion you were looking for.
Well, no, that's fine. But I got a couple different sides to this. First of all, apparently Tom Brady replied in a statement on his Facebook page, only because MySpace isn't popular anymore, that he in no means or no way tried to destroy evidence. His phone was damaged. He replaced it. He made all the text messages available to the Wells Report if they were so.
Well, and I want you to be careful. I don't know that he's saying that the text messages were made available.
Well, the way that I read the statement was that he was saying that they made every overture to Ted Wells to try to reach out to the phone company to recover whatever data they could. So I could be wrong in the way I read that, but that's the way I read it. But now he's going
to... Their statement says, we turned over detailed pages of cell phone records in all of the emails that Mr. Wells requested, and they tried to get more information. Let's see, we even contacted the phone company to see if there was any possible way we could retrieve all of the actual text messages from my old phone. We exhausted basically our attempts. We offered to go through the identity for every text and phone call during the relevant time. And I think what they're saying there is the best information they could get is there was a call or text from one phone number to another, but what was said, nobody knows. Right. And I'm not sure what that proves.
Right. So my whole take on this whole thing is from day one, and the fact that it's dragged out to the point where now we're in training camp and we're all, ready to start the season with Tom Brady suspended for the first 4 games. It never had to be like this. It getting to this point is all on Roger Goodell, and his whole handling of it. If the footballs were underinflated for whatever reason, whether it was nature, weather, somebody purposely letting the air out, whatever the circumstances were, the bottom line is that in that scenario, the way I understand it, or the way I'm looking at it from my point of view, is that the New England Patriots are responsible for that. Whether it was Joe Schmo clubhouse attendant or Tom Brady himself, the Patriots are responsible for that, and they, regardless of who gave the order, you can't handle the truth. That this whole kind of drama that's played out, it's needless. Punish the Patriots as a team. Take away a 4th-round draft pick like you did to the Cowboys a couple of years ago for another unrelated incident, and just call it a day. But now you turn it into this public inquisition on one of the faces of your league, and you drag it out to the point where you need a 20-page statement justifying why you upheld the suspension that you originally agreed on. It's like... this could not have been handled worse, in my opinion. And now we're forced to go through the court system once again because now Brady and the NFLPA are filing its lawsuit to vacate the suspension as well. And it's just going to turn into a fiasco through the whole year. And all Goodell had to do was by February just make a decision and punish the Patriots as a whole and not try to drag Brady's name through the mud. And I'm really disappointed in the way this has played out.
I hear what you're saying. I think that's where most fans of the Patriots fall on. Exactly those statements. They should have never gotten this far. And I think, again, it's just when I look back, now that we're looking back at things, you had the NFL say, we're going to investigate this. All the Patriots had to do was do exactly what you said. We take full responsibility for what happened. We'll admit to this, give us our punishment, and let's move on. And they didn't do that. The NFL investigated it. And the Patriots, they didn't really sit there and get investigated. They ended up actually having an attorney present and taking an adversarial position, which has now ultimately become that, they want to step back and say that there's no wrongdoing. And it's hard to do that now that the cat's out of the bag, so to speak. And we are where we are. We can't turn the clock back. We can only deal with what's in front of us. And so far, what my read on all this, and based on what's happened in the federal courts in the past, is that Tom Brady will be the starter week 1. And if things hold true, just as the other challenges to discipline in the federal courts, the NFL has lost, that Tom Brady will ultimately not face the punishment that's been put in front of him. But, I mean, you can make sort of the contrary argument, Keith, which is Tom should just fess up, admit to what happened, let's just move on.
Right. And you know, the suspension was...
Because it's hard to dispute it. I mean, the one thing I want to point out, and I'm not a Patriots hater, it's not like I dislike Tom Brady. I mean, I rooted for them in this Super Bowl. The reality is, and I rooted for them because I thought they would win it. Or I'm sorry. They did win it.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is they're the Patriots. They've done certain things. They've proven themselves. But at some point, you kind of got to, there's no evidence, contrary evidence being put up to say, here's evidence that says we didn't do what you said we did. There's only evidence that indicates they did do what they did. So you can't just sit there and say, well, none of this is true. I mean, that's a statement without any support. So
right.
That's where I think there was even I think it was a writer for the Boston Globe, is one of the prominent a sports writer for one of the prominent Boston news outlets, said, they just need to sort of admit to this and move on.
Yeah, Jackie McMullen.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I saw that. And she's right. She's absolutely right.
It was a guy. I'm sorry. It wasn't her. I'm sorry.
I thought I saw a link to it.
Maybe there's two writers now.
Yeah, possibly.
Now there's two.
How long are you going to drag this out? Just let it go and move on. It stinks.
But unfortunately, here's the thing. I mean, I know I heard Robert Kraft, and Robert Kraft's statement was very interesting. We could dissect it if we wanted to, but he said that the NFL is proceeding in federal court, and that's not actually true. I mean, they could be going to federal court to enforce the decision of the arbitration or to enforce their discipline, but the people that obviously don't like the discipline are Tom Brady, the Patriots, and the union. They're the ones that are actually going to go to the court and look for relief.
Right.
So, it is what it is. Now, in terms of fantasy football and what we're here to discuss tonight in the path to the draft, quarterbacks, even without the suspension, I don't really like Tom Brady as a quarterback in fantasy football any earlier than your second quarterback. His numbers just aren't there. There are many better quarterbacks right now projected to put up better numbers and to be top 12. And you shouldn't have to reach for Tom Brady. I know I heard, when he's put behind the rock, that's when he really steps up. That could be true. But he just hasn't done that. I mean, he didn't do it last year. He wasn't a top quarterback last year in terms of fantasy football. So I don't think people need to worry about that in terms of fantasy.
I would agree. Now, if you're a Brady owner and you have the opportunity to pick up Garoppolo, do you?
Well, I would say no. There is so much uncertainty around this entire situation. I wouldn't do that. In fact, I believe Tom Brady will be the quarterback in week 1 and someone you could ride if you had to, probably into week 12.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, this whole process in the federal court, even if they push it and they rush it, I mean, the injunction itself will be decided pretty quickly once somebody files a motion with the court to actually enter an injunction. They could take their time, I suppose, because of the preseason, but in theory, they could, in a day, make the decision. But then after that, there'll be a process, and even if they push that through, you got to think it'll take 2 to 3 months.
Yeah, I'll defer to you on this. I just know that when it comes to legal issues, no wheel ever turns really easy.
No, but in cases, especially that Judge Doty in Minnesota, he has, because he's sort of been the person not charged, but where they've selected to file these cases based on the applicable law, he's sort of moved these things along based on, I think, his own sense of what needs to happen and at what rate, given the parties involved.
Right.
Which, quite frankly, is nice of him.
Yeah, truly.
They have, trust me, federal courts have more important things to decide than whether these punishments should be enforced or not.
I don't know anything you're talking about. I don't understand.
That's okay. It's not it. At the end of the day, it's gobbledygook for everybody. You're going to fall on one side or the other with Tom Brady. In the end, I think he gets to play, and even if he ends up serving a 4-game suspension, his future in Canton is probably still sealed.
Right. All right, so let's get down into the down and dirty here.
Please, let's do.
Let's get off this subject because it is what it is. All right. So why don't you start with your top 5 on the fantasygreek.com, and we could talk about whether I agree or disagree or something like that.
Well, no.
I know you hate it when I disagree with you. So.
Well, you know what it is because you're playing Sunday morning quarterback basically.
Well, yeah.
While I just sit here and get hammered.
Well, yeah.
All right. Well, my top 5 are Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, Russell Wilson.
Isn't that 6?
No, I think that's 5. Isn't
it 5? I don't know.
Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, Peyton Manning, Russell Wilson.
Okay, there we go. Hey, I don't see. I'm going to be a stick in the mud, and I'm going to end up losing my fantasy season over something like this because I don't buy. And I'm not saying that I'm right. I guess make the case for people that might be saying Russell Wilson really in fantasy.
I will, and you know what? When we start talking about the players individually, I guess we need to talk about draft strategy in terms of quarterbacks.
Okay.
I think that's sort of the first step in this whole thing. And your draft strategy is as follows. You're either taking the top 2 quarterbacks in the first or second round, being Aaron Rodgers or Andrew Luck, or you are not. And you're going to load, and if you're not, you're going to load up at the other positions and then start looking at the other quarterbacks to select. Now, Andrew Luck, there's nobody that should be a first-round pick in terms of quarterbacks except Andrew Luck, and only in one circumstance. And that circumstance is if your team allows 6 points for a passing TD. Otherwise, don't even think about it until late in the second round.
Okay.
So you were talking about Russell Wilson, and to look at Wilson is then to take the latter approach, which is stock up on running backs, wide receivers with your first 3 picks before you start turning to quarterbacks. And maybe even then consider your 4th one to be either a running back or wide receiver, and then in the 5th round go to consider taking a quarterback. I mean, you could even wait until the 5th, 6th, 7th rounds. It's just there's a lot of great quarterbacks and so many good position players that you can take. My approach is going to be in, I think, all of my drafts, except maybe for one that I'm considering taking a quarterback early, is to wait on a quarterback unless Andrew Luck or Aaron Rodgers fall to me with a late round second pick. Then I might take him.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, you were talking about Russell Wilson, and your question was how to substantiate that he is a top 5 draft pick this year. And to put it bluntly, 3 seasons in a row, Russell Wilson has posted 26 touchdowns. He's solid for that number. With Jimmy Graham in the offense, he should get an uptick in yardage, and he should also be able to post 500 to 600 yards rushing, and I like him for 5 to 6 rushing TDs. That puts him up into the 30s. We're talking about 4,800 yards passing. That's what makes him a top 5 draft pick.
So you have him passing for almost 5,000 yards? Did I just hear you right? 4,800 yards passing? Is that what you said?
42 yards, excuse me.
Yeah, 42. Okay. Well,
4,200. Throw in 500 to 600 yards rushing, and then tack in the additional 5 to 6 touchdowns in terms of rushing.
It'd be really interesting to see what happens in Seattle because that Jimmy Graham trade does give him a very big end zone target to something he hasn't had in that position anyway previously. But he does add a whole other element with his legs, and he's probably more likely than any quarterback in the league to run a touchdown and as much as throw it. So.
I agree with you. I mean,
Okay.
You sort of just made my case. I mean, this is why Russell Wilson is just looking so good this year.
Okay.
He's the thing that we're looking for in these very top players is sort of, I have 3 or more options on offense, and all those options, the more of them I have, the more it's going to keep the opposing defense guessing, and I should be able to find one of these players open. And you have to like Russell Wilson with Jimmy Graham in the mix. He's got plenty of receivers. He's shown he can spread the ball around, but Jimmy Graham is going to be such a great red zone target. We're talking about Marshawn Lynch and his heavy rushing attack. Marshawn Lynch, and we'll cover this in a separate show, while seeing some decline in some of his numbers, is still going to be a red zone hawk in terms of touchdowns. And this is just going to open up the entire rushing game for Russell Wilson.
Okay. Makes sense. When you say it, it makes total sense.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
I know you do. Okay, so what are the next 3 on your list? We just talked about the top 5.
Well, I guess, do you want to talk about Andrew Luck and Aaron Rodgers, or should we just move on?
Well, I mean, it's pretty much understood that they're the 2 best passers in the league right now.
They are.
No?
They are. And let me I'll tell you why I like Andrew Luck over Aaron Rodgers, and I sort of alluded to it in some of my comments. I know a lot of people look at Aaron Rodgers and they look at his volume, and he's a very, very consistent passer. I will give, if you take Aaron Rodgers over Andrew Luck, I'm not going to be the guy poo-hooing you, that's for sure. But I like Andrew Luck because last year he showed what he could do on his feet when forced to make plays on his own. And this year the difference is going to be he's not going to have to be the guy to force plays. He's going to have, what I mentioned, a lot of options. He's going to have Frank Gore to throw the football to, Andre Johnson to throw the football to, T.Y. Hilton to throw the football to, Kobe Fleener to throw the football to, Dwayne Allen to throw the football to, Dante Moncrief to throw the football to, and who am I missing out? Jarrett, what's his name? The rookie.
Blanking out.
I am too. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, every single player on the field will demand some sort of coverage, will demand that the defense do something about it. Somebody's going to be open.
Right.
And that's why I like Andrew Luck as the number 1 guy. I don't see the same thing with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is going to be Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb all day. Devontae Adams will get some work in there. And Eddie Lacy will get some work as well, more as a rusher, though. And we still haven't seen the Packers address their tight end position. So I see more of the same of Aaron Rodgers. But I see Andrew Luck sort of in a position to take that next step and potentially go on a tear and potentially break some sort of a season record that we've seen broken before.
And, I still think that the Packers could use a little bit more balance in their game as well, offensively. And if they decide to give Eddie Lacy more carries, then that could theoretically just deflate, no pun intended, deflate Aaron Rodgers' value. Not that it's going to drop him from the top 5, but if you're wondering who the best passer is, and you're trying to if you're flipping a coin between Aaron Rodgers and Andrew Luck, I'm totally on your side in this argument. You got to go Luck.
Yeah, I just, I think it's hard not to. I really, really do. And it's funny, last season, everybody talked about Andrew Luck taking the next step and sort of being the guy, and he sure enough did it. I think he did it differently than what many people expected, and I find it sort of surprising that he's not the number 1 quarterback, hands down, amongst all fantasy analysts, but so be it. Moving on into Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning is sort of a player that, everybody expects his numbers to fall off greatly this offseason. That could happen. I think it in part will happen. I just don't see that it's going to happen enough for him to suddenly be a bad fantasy quarterback. I still think he's a very consistent guy that has a lot of players on the field that he can throw to. I mean, he's yet to throw for under 37 touchdowns and 4,650 yards with the Broncos.
Yeah. No, and again, it was really shocking the second, I don't want to say the second half, but the last third of the season. That ball really seemed to be fluttering on him, but he did a bunch of damage early in the season. It's not at the point where you start looking over Peyton.
Exactly. I mean, the fact that they're going to have a rushing game is going to help him tremendously in terms of making it through the season. If you're worried about oh, Julius Thomas is gone. Who's going to catch the other 12 footballs? Well, there's plenty of guys that can catch the other.
Right.
I'm sorry, the 12 touchdowns. We've got Owen Daniels, Virgil Green, obviously C.J. Anderson out of the backfield, and rookie. Oh, he's one of my super sleepers.
Virgil Green?
No. Cody Latimer. There's plenty of guys for him to make up the 12 touchdowns that he'll lose to Julius Thomas. I'm not worried about that. Again, this is another offense, another team where you look around and the defense has to account for their playmakers.
Yep. I would agree. The only big question mark there is, the Gary Kubiak likes to emphasize the running game, but it's still Peyton Manning back there. He's still going to throw the ball a ton.
I mean, yeah, Schaub. When Schaub had peaked and Kubiak's offense had peaked, Schaub was a good quarterback.
Yeah, no, and Schaub was a top 5, top 7 fantasy quarterback, in and of itself. And just think about what that means to have Matt Schaub be that high in fantasy.
Exactly. And if you're a fantasy footballer out there, Peyton Manning's going to fall to you. Do not reach for him. Let him fall to you. Let him just come there, and you're sitting there going, what do I do? I mean, you're going to do that with him. You're going to do that with Drew Brees this year. Just let these guys fall to you as people are saying, I don't want to touch them. Let them come to you. Ben Roethlisberger, another player I want to talk about very briefly. Every single year he has done so much better in that offense. I think things are clicking for him. Certainly, not just in Todd Haley's offense, but certainly the fact that Le'Veon Bell will only be suspended for 2 games helps him. He's another player that, except for those first 2 games of the season, he's looking around the field, and it's filled with playmakers. You've got Heath Miller. You're going to have Martavius Bryant. You're going to obviously have Antonio Brown, Sammy Coates, Marcus Wheaton. So somebody's going to be open in all this.
And once Bell comes back, and with the
stud,
the ability of him to open up that passing game, just because the defenses are going to have to respect Bell's running ability, it's just going to make it easy for Ben.
Exactly. So I love these guys as top 5 quarterbacks. I know Peyton Manning's out of the group is probably the one that's the most shakiest. People will, but everybody always in the offseason views doom and gloom disaster with players, and then the season starts. You're like, oh yeah, this guy's good. He's putting up his numbers. You don't need Peyton Manning to throw 55 touchdowns to use him in fantasy football and win.
Right. Agreed. Well, hey, you know what? We're at the 28-minute mark. Did you know that?
I did not. Is it a good time for a break?
Let's take a break. Let's take a quick break, catch our breath. When we come back, we'll hit the bottom 5 of Jim's top 10 fantasy quarterbacks. You're listening to the Fantasy Greeks NFL Power Hour on Late Night Sports Radio.
Maybe I could offer up an answer.
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
The Fantasy Greeks NFL Power Hour on LateNightSportsRadio.com. Keith Grieve from 87sportsfans.com. Joining Mr. Serentius. Follow him on Twitter at The Fantasy Greek. 585-633-7487 to call in with your questions or comments. 585-633-7487. You will be able to catch this show once we get closer to football season and during actual football season every Wednesday night at 11 o'clock. We will transition from draft preparation to weekly lineup questions and concerns. So if you're, one of those fantasy players that likes to win, you might want to give us a listen during the season. Just saying. There's your PSA. Whoa! There was like a major internet fart right there, and nobody heard a word you said.
You're kidding.
No.
Oh, no, what I was saying was, the FantasyGreek.com's tagline is your second opinion for your fantasy football instinct. I think it's very important for people that are interested in doing well in fantasy football to follow somebody, especially us, because, we're either going to help affirm your decision one way or the other, whether you agree with us or disagree with us, and that's okay with me. More than happy to be, and we're always around for people. I also want to give a big shout out to a couple people that are listening to us right now. One is one of our writers, Alexander George, out over there in Flushing, New York. Alexander, big shout out to you. And then Patrick Boulier of the Big Ticket Podcast. He's out there in Quebec. Or not Quebec, I'm sorry, Vancouver. What a terrible mistake there.
Wow. You know what you get, Jim? You know what you get for that?
Yeah, that was one of those. I kind of hate those. Those are annoying, by the way.
I know. That's why I keep them there.
Oh. Anyway, back to quarterbacks.
Okay. We went through the top five. Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, and Russell Wilson rounding up the Fantasy Greeks top five. So, Jim, who's next on the list?
Well, Drew Brees of the New Orleans Saints. One of the things with looking at Drew Brees, because everybody's poo-hooing him because, oh, my God, he's lost Jimmy Graham. You know what? Drew Brees was a good quarterback before Jimmy Graham.
Right.
He put up some phenomenal numbers. I think Jimmy Graham obviously helped him go over the top. But even when Jimmy Graham struggled, and he has the last two seasons, Drew Brees still did well. Now, the way I've approached him is, what's the best he can do? And I got him at 4,900 yards and 36 TDs. I think that's the best that he can do.
That's not. We'll see. Here's the thing, because I'm all doom and gloom sometimes on these guys. So, like, when you throw out numbers like that, I'm like, oh, well, that's more than doable for a fantasy quarterback. But like when I see Drew Brees and the Saints, I'm reading too much. Is what the problem is.
Yeah, here. Somehow the Saints are somehow going to score 50 TDs, I think, or at least they're in the running for it. And they're going to be in the running because they're going to have Mark Ingram and C.J. Spiller. C.J. Spiller is going to contribute in the passing game primarily. He's going to be like Darren Sproles or Pierre Thomas, 6 to 8 TDs right there. You got to like Marcus Colston for 6 to 8 TDs. You got to like Brendan Cooks for 10 TDs. Josh Hill should be a touchdown magnet in the red zone based on his limited action last year, where I think, 5 out of 14 receptions was a touchdown, some ridiculous number like that. Plus, somewhere along the line, someone else in that receiving group will step up and catch us another 6 to 8 TDs. So it's really a matter of viewing Drew Brees as a player that can do what we're saying he can do. It's not about a player that just can't. He can. We know he can. So the way you're going to be in a fantasy draft, and it'll be like the 5th or 6th round, you've got your top running backs, you got your top wide receivers, maybe even a third wide receiver, and there's Drew Brees staring at you right in the face. And you go get him.
Yeah, it's. Did you see the Twitter recap or the Twitter what's it, tantrum that Junior Gillette sent out in the wake of his release from New Orleans?
I did not.
He basically ripped everybody on that team apart. And again, you take it as sour grapes. The guy got cut. The guy's got issues right now. You don't take everything word for word, but just painted a really bad picture of that offense. So I'm like, buyer beware a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes, which none of us really know is true or not. But it's just like, is Drew Brees going to be Drew Brees? He still plays half of his games in a dome. He's still got Marcus Colston. You know what I mean? Brandon Cooks, we were excited about him last year, if I remember correctly, and it seemed to be a little bit flatter than what we expected. But can he take that next step up with not having Jimmy Graham in the mix as well? It's hard to bet against him, is my point. And then, like you said, C.J. Spiller comes out, and if he can stay healthy, will just be another weapon to go along with.
And if he doesn't, I mean, Mark Ingram's just
Yeah, Mark
stud.
Yeah, Ingram set himself apart from the three-headed monster that has been the Saints running backs in the past. So, yeah, it's hard.
I find it hard to bet against Drew Brees.
I agree. Totally agree.
Period. People that are putting way too much emphasis on what Jimmy Graham brought to the table, especially last year where Jimmy Graham was hurt and wasn't really contributing like he should.
Yeah, it was kind of it seems like that team, that roster is kind of in flux. And you never want to say, or it's hard to say, that Sean Payton's job might be in jeopardy, but it really hasn't been all that smooth since his return from suspension. And if you want to go back and count the year before the suspension that, ultimately culminated in the suspension, it hasn't really painted a picture of a franchise that's, the steady ship on the rocky seas. You know what I mean? Am I being stupid by saying that?
No, no.
No, I didn't hear that.
You didn't? I'm sorry. I was going to say, I said, not at all. I think you've hit it on the head. It certainly paints a different picture. It would Sean Payton's job. I don't know that it's on the line, but I definitely think that there's pressure. More so, not on the offense, but I think on the defensive side of the ball. I think the offense is going to be fine this year. It's on the defense that Rob Ryan. Sooner or later, he's got to put up a unit that just is great, and I think his time to put up or shut up has gone by several times, and this is just one more of those times.
Okay.
Moving on.
We've beaten Breeze to death here. So.
We have, and our next quarterback, I don't think there's much to discuss. It's Tony Romo of the Dallas Cowboys. I really like Tony Romo for so many reasons. The first reason is he stands behind a great offensive line that can pass protect. The Dallas Cowboys, their rushing game, while I think Darren McFadden could be poised for a good season, it's not going to be DeMarco Murray type numbers. And I like the Tony Romo of 2015 to be more like the Tony Romo of 2012, where he could put up 4,800 yards and 30-plus TDs. He's got the wide receiving group for it. I mean, you don't need much more than Dez Bryant. Terrence Williams is entering his third year as a wide receiver, and he's poised to break out. I even like Jason Witten as sort of a comeback player, maybe not like the Jason Witten of old, but to see him put up 800, 900 yards and 6 to 8 TDs certainly wouldn't surprise with the problems. And this is assuming that they have some sort of problems with their rushing attack, which they should, just by virtue of the fact we won't see a 2,000-yard rusher like DeMarco Murray on the team.
Okay. I can't find anything bad to say about Tony Romo after last year. He exercised a lot of demons in my mind last year. Because the knock on him was always the bad interception at the wrong time or turnover prone. Not capable of doing what is necessary to be a winner. And I didn't see any of that old Tony Romo last year, and a lot of it has to do with the way they ran the ball, made life a lot easy for him, and rightfully so. That's not a knock on Romo by any stretch of the imagination, but to me, I think he's how old is he now? Is he like pushing 30? No, he's got to be up like 30, 31.
Oh, he's got to be. I'll look it up, but I got to think he's easily 30 years old. Jason Witten's got to be around 30 years old.
Yeah, so, even though Romo's kind of like in the middle of his career, middle to later part of his career, he could be a guy that within the next year or two could possibly be a top 5 if the arc stays the same. You know what I mean?
I do. And actually, it's interesting that you bring that up. This year, we're sort of seeing this change in running backs, just this huge injection of young, talented running backs. And sooner or later, we're going to have it's sort of a turnover moment. Guys like Steven Jackson are gone. Ray Rice is sort of,
he should
for
be
all
gone,
intents and purposes, he's gone.
He'll be back.
Chris Johnson is gone, and we're suddenly seeing people coming in to take their spots. Sooner or later, we're going to see the same effect with the quarterbacks. Tony Romo, let's see, he is 35. So he's at the tail end of his career.
Yeah, never mind. I forget what I said.
He's got another 5 years at best, maybe 7, and I think he's done.
Wow. So if the Cowboys never make it to a Super Bowl, what's the book on Tony Romo, in your opinion? Really good quarterback, just couldn't get it done.
I think it'd be tough to make a case for him, let's say, for the Hall of Fame. I think he'll be remembered at a minimum as a very good quarterback where nothing really lined up right. With the exception of last year, they had an inconsistent running game because of the injuries to DeMarco Murray. Fair enough.
Right.
He had some growing pains in terms of being a quarterback. I mean, had they had a running game 3 years ago in 2012, I think it was when he threw for 4,800 yards. I mean, this would have been a devastating Dallas Cowboys team, but they didn't. They've had inconsistencies on defense as well. That hasn't helped them. Finally, last year, we saw some semblance of a defense, and if they could get that defense and that offense clicking together, which they could this year, this is a team that could do some damage. I mean, I know you and I have debated whether or not Des Bryant's touchdown grab was in fact a touchdown or not. Without rehashing that argument, the fact was they were a score away from moving on.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Right now it just seems like, they lost to the Packers, and then the Packers, advanced, and then the Packers lost. It would have been the Cowboys, and the Cowboys, I think, beat the Seahawks last year.
Right.
In Seattle.
Yep. It's when you break it down like that, it's that much more gut-wrenching that it came down to a call like that. But who knows what the Cowboys could have done if they win that game.
And that's the truth. That is the truth. So who do we got next?
So
I guess we got Big Blue, Eli Manning.
I was surprised to see him so high on your list.
I was really sold on the idea that, Odell Beckham, Victor Cruz, Terrell Jernigan, Shane Vereen, Rashad Jennings, their tight end. They don't need a great tight end in that offense to be good. What is it, fellow's name?
Hold on. I'll get it.
Oh, I'm looking it up right now. It's Larry Donnell.
Oh my God.
Or Daniel Phelps, whoever they decide to be their starting. To me, I look around. I know their offensive line is an issue. I think they'll get over that, at least for the short term, until Will Beatty can get back. They just have, I think, a potent offense. I mean, what we saw out of Odell Beckham Jr. in 12 games,
right,
it was just mind-blowing.
And then you have the Victor Cruz coming back from injury, hopefully at 100%.
I think he'll be back. I think Cruz will be back at 100%, and if not, they'll work him in slowly.
And the addition of Shane Vereen.
Shane Vereen should be I think he'll be an exceptional player in this offense, the way they're going to use him. So that's why I'm high on Eli Manning this year. I know he's sort of this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type of player in terms of his fantasy stats, but I think he's hard to ignore. I mean, we're talking about the number 8 quarterback. If you're going to draft him, it'll be somewhere in the 6th, 7th, or 8th round, depending on how hot people are in quarterbacks in your league, and this is really true. I'm in one league. People start drafting quarterbacks right out of the gate, and I just sit there and I'm like, well, I'm just going to wait. You've taken these top quarterbacks. Why should I get one right now?
Yep.
Right?
Yep, absolutely.
And we've seen plenty of Matt Ryan. He's never really quite broken through. I think he's had his best opportunities to break through, which is why I think Eli Manning is still sort of up there. Phillip Rivers, I sort of say the same thing. Cam Newton, I sort of say the same thing. Matt Stafford, what can you say about him? He's certainly a great value pick in upcoming fantasy drafts, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. So Eli Manning, I like, is the number 8 fantasy football quarterback. Certainly capable of 30-plus TDs, and I truly believe 45 to 5,000 yards.
Oh, wow.
He's close to – I think he could put up some career best numbers.
Wow. So you're making me second guess my off-season trade where I gave up Eli Manning and Julius Thomas for a first-round draft pick.
Well, I'm sorry to say,
your silence says everything. Your silence is definitely.
No, you know what? To get a first-round draft pick and to get an opportunity to get a better quarterback, well, Jay Cutler's your other guy. I don't know why.
That's right. Cuddy does
it. But, Cuddy does it. Not.
Cuddy does it. ...
Not.
You could tell I didn't make this list because I'd have Cutler number 6.
You're truly a funny man.
I try to be. But yet I have 6 rings. So
that's you do. You do. So well, Matt Ryan. Hey, how about Matt Ryan? He's been consistently a 4,500 yard plus TD, 45 yard plus passer, 26 TD plus passer in the last 3 seasons. Consistent top 10 option. If they can get their rushing attack going this year, I think sky's the limit for Matt Ryan as well as Julio Jones. If they struggle to get a rushing attack going, I think he could struggle. His best years were with a strong running game.
Yeah.
So
I read something today about Roddy White constantly needing medical attention for like draining joints. That doesn't bode well.
Yeah, it really seems that Roddy White is. He's been getting injured quite a bit lately. There was, I think, an 8-year stretch Roddy White had not missed a game, and then suddenly, he starts having problems. Part of it is probably just overuse. When Julio Jones has had sort of an injury history, not a deep one, but sort of one, and sooner or later the Falcons will have to look at Roddy White and say, we need to get another guy. Just by the passage of time. Not because he's a bad player or a bad guy. Those things are not true. He's a great player and he's a good guy. But sooner or later they're going to have to look at that situation. I think if the Falcons could get their tight end position contributing, which I like to think should with Jacob Tamme, this is a team that could really take off. Offensively. Defensively, another story.
Right. All right.
So number 10.
No, wait, hold on, because I'm looking at the Atlanta Falcons roster right now.
How are we doing on time, by the way?
We are at the 53-minute mark, so we're all right. We're right where we want to be. Right where we want to be. And you look at, God, you mentioned about the running game before, but this has this roster has the tendency to either be really good or really bad. I don't think there's going to be any middle ground with this roster, this offensive roster. If White is injury prone, if Devin Hester doesn't take the same strides that he did last year on offense, which I don't think he will personally, then you've got Julio Jones, Leonard Hankerson, the 4th round draft pick Justin Hardy.
I like Leonard Hankerson, by the way. I think he's a pretty good ball player.
Eric Weems, that thing. I just think that if things go the wrong way, then things could go south in a hurry. And the thing that the factor that I think plays in the Falcons' favor is that Dan Quinn coming over from Seattle has a vision on defense, and if he can get Atlanta's defense to, don't expect Seattle to just be transplanted in Atlanta, folks. That's not going to happen. But if he can get that defense playing tougher and kind of shore up some of the holes there, and give the offense a little bit more of a margin of error, then I think that maybe you can overcome some of those thin parts of the roster. But if everything goes well, Matt Ryan should be in line for a pretty good year. All right, number 10. Number
10. And I was going to say this next quarterback. I looked him up, and I couldn't believe when I saw he was 33 years old. I thought he would be 35, just like Tony Romo. It's San Diego Chargers' Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, no, remember he's the same age as Eli too, because they came out the same year.
I know, but you kind of look at these guys, and they almost seem like they should be together, and they're not. Right. But they're close. I mean, there's going to be sort of within a few years there'll be quite a bit of turnover in terms of quarterbacks leaving the league and leaving the top ranks and then entering the top ranks. But I have Phillip Rivers as number 10, and people this offseason continue to poo-hoo him. He had a bad season last year, and I think he had a bad season last year because they had a terrible running game.
Right.
I mean, when they had a great running game 2 years ago, he had one of his best seasons. And with Melvin Gordon, I think they're going to just be a better team. Melvin Gordon doesn't even have to put up 1,500 yards rushing, even though I think that he can.
Right.
He just has to be, if he could put up 100 to 120 all-purpose yards and let's say 8 TDs, Phillip Rivers will be helped out tremendously. The big test is going to be right at the beginning of the season without Antonio Gates, 4-game suspension, how he gels with Darius Green. But Phillip Rivers strikes me as a player that will find a way with players that he has to play with. He will put it in their hands. He will tell them, I'm going to you, be ready, you're going to be a star.
No, he's got all of the ability in the world. I think what you said was exactly right. They struggled running the ball. They became one-dimensional, and it's very hard to win in this league when you're one-dimensional, regardless of who you have back there.
Absolutely. So it hurts Keenan Allen. It hurts Michael Floyd. It hurts Antonio Gates. It hurt everybody. Now, Keenan Allen is one of these wide receivers that's poised for sort of a comeback just because he had an off year last year. I know it was his second year, but based on what he did his rookie year, you would have expected more. But I think he'll be a better receiver than people will make out him to be. Ladarius Green, I think, will be a better receiver than they will make out to be. Don't forget Stevie Johnson, who joins the group. Stevie's sort of the sleeper that I really like and should be a big contributor. Whether he'll contribute in fantasy is a different story. And Melvin Gordon, he'll likely be, if not the one of the top rookies in fantasy and in the league this year. Oh, and besides Phillip Rivers, he's generally been a consistent 4,000-plus yard passer. I like him for 4,530 TDs.
Okay. Wow.
Now we're getting on the fringe quarterbacks.
Yeah. Who's next now? Because what usually happens in my drafts anyway is that, if we follow your list, Luck and Rodgers might go like the top of the second round. And then somebody throws in, they take Peyton Manning. And then somebody starts getting antsy. Like, oh, my God, there's not going to be any good quarterbacks left. And you'll see, like, Roethlisberger, Wilson come off the board. Is it all right if I end up at the end of the draft with Phillip Rivers or somebody below him, like, in the next year? Who's the next 3 guys on your list?
The next 3 guys on my list are Cam Newton, Matt Stafford, Ryan Tannehill.
Ooh.
In what way?
I got to say I want Stafford more than the other 2.
Than the other 3?
Yeah, than Newton or Tannehill.
Really? I mean, here, Matt Stafford, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So you like him better than Cam Newton?
Yes.
And you like him better than Phillip Rivers?
Yes.
And Matt Ryan?
No. I'm sorry. I like Stafford better than Cam Newton or Ryan Tannehill, those 3 names that you mentioned.
Okay. Well, here's the thing with Stafford, and it's perplexing. 4 seasons ago, this man threw for over 5,000 yards and 41 touchdowns. 4 seasons ago.
Yeah.
But he's been on a steady decline ever since.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great value pick falling so late in fantasy drafts. I mean, I will give you that. I think if you can get Stafford in the 7th, 8th round, God bless you.
Right.
But just looking at the history, is he gonna do? I mean, I like him for 4,500 yards, 4,600 yards, but 25 to 30 TDs, and where he falls in that range will really dictate the kind of value that you're going to get out of him. Can he do better than 30? Of course he can. He showed he could do that 4 seasons ago, but it's 4 seasons ago.
Right. You still got the Calvin Johnson.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
12,
Golden
10, 12, 14 TDs? Yes.
Yep. Golden Tate was a solid pickup
Stud.
last year.
Stud.
The question with them, like Atlanta, is the running game. Drake Bell's on the PUP list right now. Theo Riddick is second in line there. Amir Abdullah was drafted in the 2nd round this past year.
Oh, for another show, Amir Abdullah. That's the guy that you want for the Detroit Lions.
Well,
I think he's the guy. And if he could get 6 receiving TDs, that would go a long way to helping Stafford's numbers. If they could find a tight end that could play the position and become a move tight end, they would be so much of a better team. Brandon Pettigrew, his best season was the year that Stafford blew it up.
Mm-hmm.
It's proof in the pudding. If they could get that tight end that could do that, and they might. I mean, this, could be the kind of year that we see a young, what is he, a second-year tight end this year? Eric Ebron.
Yep, Eric Ebron. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, last year they didn't really use him. And I know he was banged up part of the season, but they didn't really use him. If he could have a solid season, yes, I think Matthew Stafford would be a much better quarterback than the current ranking represents. But I like the ranking right now in terms of sort of how it captures some of the risks that you're going to have to take. He certainly is not a top 5 guy. And if he's top 10, he's borderline at best.
Right. Okay. It's just amazing how fast the mighty fall.
It is. Now, there's some fringe quarterbacks. We got Ryan Tannehill here, who I think is in a great situation, depending how his running game pans out. He's got a bunch of great weapons in the passing game. Jarvis Landry, Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker, Jordan Cameron, all signs that he will have a good season.
I like the Greg. I like the Greg Jennings signing too.
See, I'm not.
He's not going to blow it up though. He's a veteran, calming presence on a young team.
Yeah, I don't know that he's any of those things. I mean, he was a good player back in the day, and I think that's what carried him. And now I think that was a sign that they could have done without.
He'll be better in the locker room than Mike Wallace. That's for sure.
I would think so.
Okay.
Sam Bradford, he's a risk-reward guy. I mean, this is the kind of offense that you want a great passing quarterback in, and he has shown flashes in the past. He'll likely show flashes again, and the question is whether he can stay healthy. After that, got some different quarterbacks, but one I want to talk about is Andy Dalton, because I know there are plenty of people that are high on him. I'm not high on him. This is a team that, even though I've heard wants to be more dynamic in the offense, they are still committed to running the football. You can't have it both ways. Andy Dalton has shown flashes. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he can break 30 TDs, but I can't sit here and tell you that he will in fact break 30 TDs. I like him for more 3,800 yards and 25 pass TDs.
Yeah, Dalton. I try to stay away from Dalton in fantasy, but
Me too.
If you got no other options, you could do a lot worse. But Hey, we ran a little over, but we're done for the day. We're done for the week, folks. Check in next week. What are we doing next week? Running backs?
We'll do running backs next week.
We'll do running
Why
backs. Wednesday night, 11 o'clock Eastern time, right here at Late Night Sports Radio. For Jim Sarantias, the Fantasy Greek from thefantasygreek.com. I'm Keith Greek from 87sportsfans.com. Have a nice week, folks.